Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about some tactics and going through a deep dive into each character about Super Fantasy Brawl. In particular, the 15 champions and the current situation with Super Fantasy Brawl, with what we've got at the moment. Obviously, with the round 2 Kickstarter coming up very, very soon, things may change, and what I say in this video might be slightly different at that point. I'm going to start by talking about some general tactics, some general rules. Then I'll talk about 2 specific places to look in the rulebook, which are very, very important. One of those is page 9, which talks about the attack sequence. That's an essential part of to learn and to understand before you play Super Fantasy Brawl. And the other one is looking at the keywords and what do they actually mean. And that's really to answer a lot of questions that have come on social media and hopefully tackle some of those misconceptions. I then follow on to the core 6 characters of Super Fantasy Brawl, which will be like the core box retail version, I guess you could call it. Then I move through the 6 extra characters that came with the Kickstarter 1 core box, and then I go on to the 3 Force of Nature expansion characters as well. I'll go through each of their cards. I'll talk about tactics. I'll talk about their character card as well, just to give you all the kind of idea of how it works. Okay, and this is from very basic terms as well. So hopefully after watching this video, you'll have a better idea of the characters, how they play, what they're about, and the kind of key bits about the game as well to help you along your way. So I'll timestamp everything, all the different sections, the different characters below, so you can go to those or revisit those at any time you want. And I hope you find this helpful. Please do like, subscribe if you want to see any more Super Fantasy Brawl, of course, as well as some other games. And be sure to comment as well. How are you finding Super Fantasy Brawl, especially your first games? Are you enjoying it? I love this game. I think it's just an absolutely stellar game for that 2-player, predominantly, arena battle style games. Okay, so without further ado, let's get on to the rules. So there are a number of things with the game, rules, techniques, things to think of, which are kind of essential to be playing SFB properly. And I wanted to talk about just looking at the kind of questions and the issues that people are coming across. They've got quite a common theme, and a lot of them can be answered by looking at page 9 of the rulebook. This is an essential thing to make sure you know. And this is the attack steps, how the phases of an attack work, and the order in which they happen. So, if we read it on here, it's in page 9. Use as much of the card's movement as you choose. So, as with all cards, you do the green movement boots first, the movement step first, up to that value in any direction. Then resolve any pre-attack abilities. So effectively, the attacking card, that character will trigger any of those, jumps or whatever it might be. Choose if you will use the attack. Now, this is one that I forgot recently in my quarterfinal match, where I wasn't sure if I could just jump in and not attack, because I didn't want to trigger a reaction, which I thought that my opponent would have. You don't have to. So if you choose not to make an attack, it activates. The activation ends immediately. Okay, so that's the attack done. And you might want to do that to get yourself into position, because it's better than using a core to just move 2, let's say. Declare your targets comes next. So once you're in position, then you declare what your targets are, looking at your card, your attack card. So if we take Fireball as our example, you've moved up to 1. There is no pre-attack. So then you go to your targeting, and you target something within 2 to 3. Opponent chooses whether to play reactions. So let's say one of Tzu Xiao's champions decide, I'm going to play this. So they're going to play a reaction card. That's when you choose when to play a reaction. Then the target's defense value is subtracted from the current strength value of the attack. That includes if your reaction card has any additional defense. Okay, and then the attack minus that defense. So let's say in this argument, for this, we'll use this as our example case. Okay, Gwaen's character is going to use, let's say she's there. She decides she wants to get a bit closer to the red zone, so she moves 1. She then does any pre-attack abilities, which she doesn't have any on this card. Then she chooses a target within this range. In this case, it's going to be Tzu Xiao. She's going to attack for 3 damage attack. Now the defender decides if they want to react, and they will. They're going to react with Revenge. They show that card, and they play that card, obviously exhausting the core that links to that colour. Then, the current target defense is taken away from the attack. The attack is 3. So the attack is 3 damage. Tzu Xiao has no defense, so that's going to do 3 damage onto Tzu Xiao. That happens now. Okay? Resolve attack damage. This is the one that people forget about. Is at this stage here, stage 7, that you resolve the attack damage before you resolve any post-attack abilities. Very, very, very important that you do that in that order. Obviously, if you take out the character that played the reaction, then it doesn't trigger. They're off the board, and their reaction does not trigger. And probably your reaction, your post-attack thing, may not trigger either, like pushes and pulls or whatever it might be. Next, just dropped on the floor. Next, so that's 7. So attack damage is done. So 3 damage would go on to Tzu Xiao. So you take your 3 damage marker and you put it on Tzu Xiao. Then you resolve the post-attack abilities from reaction. So defender's post-attack, this one, happens first. So in the case of Revenge, you do the same amount of attack damage as the back onto the opponent. So therefore, 3 damage would go against Gwaien. Now, the important point here, let's say for argument's sake, Gwaien was already on 3 damage. That means that 3 damage goes on Gwaien and takes her out, which means she is gone from the board. Tzu Xiao gets leveled up because whatever champion this was played on gets leveled up, and you get 1 VP. Also, stage 9 will not occur. Resolve any post-attack. Now, with Fireball, that's quite important because it's deal 2 damage to each adjacent target, champion adjacent to the target. So if that was the case and it was 6 damage, then that trigger's not going to happen. However, if let's say it just does the 3 damage, which is fine, then it would be an extra damage, 2 damage onto Kilgore, who is adjacent. Okay. So the key bit is this bit here. This is what's going to be key. Resolve the attack damage. The target's defense value is subtracted from the current strength value of the attack. Resolve attack damage. That's what we mean by this. Attack damage. Okay? That's what that means. Damage is the blood icon. Then resolve the post-attack of the reaction first, then the post of the attack card. Now this might be really important because if, let's just say for argument's sake, we're going to push, let's say we're here, and we're going to push Gwaien and kill her off by an attack and then pushing her into the wall. If Gwaen's in the player's deck of 18 cards, they've got a reaction which enables her to move as her reaction, then she would move out of the way, and therefore, because they're not in the same line of hexes, no longer does the push occur. So it has to be a feasible reaction to occur, and that's an important step. The other thing is, if we had Fireball like this, if we had this situation, in which case you're not in range of the Fireball, I don't know why you would do this, but let's just say you do for this argument's sake, then this, because you don't attack, this does not trigger. Okay, this does not trigger. And you can't just say, I'm attacking this space over this empty space here. That's not a target. A target has to be an enemy champion. A target has to be an enemy champion, not an empty space or a statue or something. Okay? So really essential, page 9 of the rulebook, to make sure you follow that process. The other thing I wanted to go through was about these. Let me just move some of these cards a minute. Is to go through these keywords because again, a lot of the confusion is about some of these keywords. So bloodied, I've already talked about. I will talk about bloody. Sorry, in some of the champions, but this got changed from rounding up to rounding down in terms of the amount of hit points you have left. But you go to half your hit points or fewer remaining rounded down. So if you've got a 7 hero champion, they will go down to 3 health remaining. If you bloody them, that counts as bloodied or less. So 3, 2, or 1. Control is most amount of characters in the area. So in this example here, this player has 2 characters, this player has 1. Therefore, this player is controlling that area. That's important for your challenges. Dashing is in a straight line. It's still movement, so you can move through your allies. So if you've got this and you want to get to here, you do not have to do that. You can just go 1, 2, or you can dash 2. That's absolutely fine. A dash would stop at a statue or an enemy figure. Okay, but it has to be in a straight line up to that value. Up to that value. Draw X is drawing that number of cards from the top of your draw deck. Fear, but it does say you must declare how many you will draw before you draw any. Now that's really an important point, and that's the same with any drawing mechanic in games. It's so you don't see what you get before you draw your next ones. So you say if you got a draw 3 and plan 1 or something like that as a card, then what and plan 3, sorry. Then what you would do is you say I'm going to draw 2 cards. Then you draw the 2 cards, and you can't draw any more. Fear X. Now fear is you have to go in a straight line up to that maximum value, that fear value, away from the person causing the fear. So let's say Gwaien is doing the fear on Kilgore. A fear 2. Let's say it's a fear 2. He has to go here, here, or here. Okay? Here, here, or here. He cannot go here because now he's 2 away instead of 3 away. So you always got to go further away. If there are enemies blocking certain paths, then this limits his. He can't go this way because you can't go through enemies or statues. So I can't go that way. So it's here or here. That's fear. So it has to go away to a maximum distance away from the champion causing fear. In a dash. So it's following the same rules as a dash. You can move if you have got an ally who's adjacent. You do move through your opponent, your allies. Okay, so move through allies. Force. Force is when you as the person creating the force from that attacking character, whatever it might be, you choose to move them like in normal movement. So if it's a force 2, and let's say Kilgore's doing a force 2 on Sulka, in this particular case, then you get to force her 2. So you might go, I only want to move her to there, or I want to move her over to here to trigger that trap and get her away from the objective, whatever it might be. Okay? Heal is heal that much damage, whatever it might be. Jump X, basically the best way to think about jump. So if Kilgore is throwing Tzu Xiao, which is a jump 3, you take it from Tzu Xiao's hex and you place him in a hex 3 away. It can be over statues, it can be over enemy champions, wherever you want, up to 3 away. Okay, that's jump. Lifesteal is, and it says here, during the resolve attack damage step of the thing, the attack damage is healed for the amount of damage for the amount equal to the attack damage, not the amount of damage done to the opponent. So if you are attacking with lifesteal someone who only has 1 health left, but your attack damage is 3, you still heal 3, even though you did 1 damage to that opponent. That's the important bit about lifesteal. Poison X. During the resolve attack damage step of this attack, if damage was dealt, deal X damage to the target. So please note, it's on the other page. When we come to talk about double, which I completely forgot about, this is why this is important. Because what double is after completing the resolve attack damage step. This is after. So poison happens before double. Very important, okay? Very, very important. So as long as you will do damage, as long as you will do damage to your opponent, so you've taken away the armor, as long as you're doing at least 1 damage, you will do X additional damage to the target. That X additional damage is also doubled in the attack. Don't think of a double as doing an attack twice. It's just doing this resolve attack damage step twice. And if you remember, back on page 9, why it's so important, you're just doing step 7 again, not the whole thing. So you just do the target's defense value from any reaction cards, whatever it might be, whatever that attack damage is, you double it. Okay, really, really important. We've already talked about place. It's the same as jump, effectively. Planning is a really essential part of the game. It's a way of ensuring you're getting that card from your hand on your next turn. Okay, and you plan X from the top, from your hand to the top of the deck, up to that value. Pull and push are really key mechanics in the game. Is how you, number one, you move your enemies from objectives, but it's also how to do unblockable damage. If Kilgore is going to go here and push, if it's a push 1, because it's blocked, and this can be for a statue or if you've got like enemies, then you're pushed into the, it doesn't matter what it is actually, ally or enemy, as long as it's pushed into a champion, then any spaces it cannot move from that push will count as unblockable damage. So a push 2 here would be 2 unblockable, a push 1 would be 1 unblockable, same for here. If we had this situation with a push 1, it just moves there, no damage. Push 2 moves to here and takes 1 damage. Okay, so that's the same. Pull's exactly the same. You pull 1 to here, but if it's a pull 2, 1 and bang, 1 unblockable damage. You can obviously push and pull onto traps as well as a good mechanic. Root means that they cannot move during the duration of the turn, but can still be placed. Important terminology, can still be placed. So if something says place your instead of move, basically says place instead of move, you can still do that. Okay, so that is quite an important little caveat to root. Okay, so in other words, moving, dashing, sweeping, jumping, you can't do any of those after that, after you've suffered root. Obviously the traps, 2 of those traps in the set have root. Stun, again, 2 of the traps have stun, as well as some attacks. When a champion suffers stun, its controller must discard a card belonging to that champion. If they do not have a card belonging to that champion, they must show their hand to the other champion. Swoop is the final one, which is a bit like dash, is the best way to think of it, except for you can go over any obstacles. So enemy, characters, traps, and statues. So Ahket, who's a bit of a swooper, could potentially go from here to swoop 3 by going 1, 2, 3, and that would be a swoop 3. So that it has to be in a straight line up to that value, but you ignore enemies, statues, and traps. Okay. So that was a little bit about a couple of points in the rulebook, and by the way, all those keywords are on the last 2 pages of the rulebook. Page 9 is essential. Make sure you are following that attack sequence. And as I said, pretty much the vast majority of the questions that are asked on social media have been about attack sequence. Literally could have been answered by looking at the attack sequence. Remember, if you're doing targets, that's the only thing. If you do multiple targets, the reaction card that you play is only on 1 target. Okay, so declare targets. Opponent chooses whether to play reactions. So you could play multiple reactions for the multiple targets. You have to do that before the attacker decides on which target they are doing first, resolving this for first. Okay, think of it as happening simultaneously, but you need to play all reactions, and you can play more. You can't play more than one reaction on a single character from a single attack, but you can play multiple reactions, one for each champion. Okay. Then once you've done this, you choose one target, and then you do this. Then you resolve the attack damage. You do this, and then you go back to the other one. You go on to the next target, and then the next target. Okay. And I think that's all of the kind of little essential rules, as it were. The only other thing is, when you have been taken out and you're off your board and you're waiting to come back on, you have to use. You have to use the green movement to come back on. You can't use dash. You can't dash onto the board. Okay, you have to use green movement to jump on. Also, for someone like Tzu Xiao, which has got, who has got, let me bring it up, who's got this. This does not give them, if the attacking card does not have, this one. So, for example, if you play this card and get +1 boot, that does not give this card up 1 movement. It has to have movement already on it to get the extra bonuses from that. Okay, so that's a little bit about movement. That you need movement points, not a whole action, just points to come on the board. You spend one of those movement boot points to move onto one of your deployment hexes, any one you want, and you just carry on the card from that. Okay, so for example, Fireball, you could just go onto here and then attack Ahket. That's absolutely fine. You resolve the rest of the card. Okay, so that was another thing about just resolving. Okay, so with that in mind, we're going to move on to the champions next. I'll go through each champion in turn, go through their cards, their character card, and a bit of tactics as well. I'll also timestamp on the bottom each of those characters, so you can go to your favourite character or just want to go to this particular champion and find out a bit more information about how to play them, as it were. Okay. I've split the characters into several decks here. We've got the core characters here. We've got the stretch goals, I guess you can call it, or the expansion characters here, which came with the core box, and then the Force of Nature 3 champions here. Now these 6 core characters, which are Kilgore, Gwaien, Dugrun, Goldar, Deryn, and Tzu Xiao, are core characters because, in essence, they're the easiest ones to play. Okay. Now, in this game, it's really important to note that yes, taking out characters does give you a VP, and it's first to 5 VP. But it's really these challenges where the game is won and lost. These are essential as part of the game. Now, you only ever score them at the start of your turn, so that's really important to remember, which means that it gives your opponent a chance to try and stop you from scoring those objectives. And a lot of it is when you are the first person to score them, okay? It's taken away from the track and the other player will not be able to. So I think a lot of new players to the game, for example, have 2 or more champions adjacent to Rigal's statue. Sometimes they're thinking that if their opponent, if them and the opponent both have 2 adjacent to the same statue, then it doesn't get scored. But that's not the case. At the start of whichever player meets the objective on the challenge card, they will score that immediately at the start of their turn. So it's really important to focus on those objectives. The objective play is the key part to the game. It's kind of what the whole point of the lore of the game was about, and the fact that it's fabulosa, and you've got all these mages, this arena, very much like gladiatorial arenas in Roman days, in the Roman era. This is the same kind of idea. So it's really about appeasing the crowd, the mages, So this is why this is the most important. Now, obviously, the one really efficient way of being able to control these and stop your opponent scoring them is by taking out characters that are meeting these objectives. So they kind of tie in together, and I think that's the point, is the best kind of plays and what you want to be aiming for is to meet those objectives, stop your opponent hitting those objectives, and doing so by maybe taking out your opponents. Okay, but that may not always be the case. So, with that in mind, as the number one thing tactic to bear in mind, that you're trying to hit these objectives, and you're trying to stop your opponent from hitting those objectives. The strongest moves in the game are displacement moves. What I mean by that is the pulls, the pushes, the forces, fears. These keywords are kind of key. They're really important for the game. They're the best way to kind of almost, not guarantee, but the best way to displace your opponent from meeting their objectives. So let's have a little look at the core 6 characters and what they are like and how they play. And then also how they combo together, because ultimately it's a team of 3 characters, and it's how those 3 characters combo together will give you a good synergy and give you a better chance. Now, what I will say is when you first play the game, just go for 3 characters that you really like the look of. Probably the best way to do it is the casual draft way, where you literally just choose one, you flip your token to see who's first player, and then swords, which is this side of the board, they will choose one first, and then second player, and then first player again, second player, first player, second player. And therefore you're hitting all of your champions that you want. And just go with the ones you like the look of. Do you want to be that mage with a lot of damage? Do you want to be that sturdy dwarf Dugrun? Do you want to be the ranged Deryn? Do you want to be the fast moving and potentially best character in the game, Tzu Xiao? Do you want to be the beefy orc Kilgore? Or do you want to be the displacement hungry but kind of like a jack of all trades Goldar? So kind of think about how you want to create a team. But ideally in your team, it does depend. I mean, the meta at the moment, and what I mean by that is with the character pool that we've got at the moment, with all the characters available to us, there are some quite clear top tier champions, and at the end of the online league, which I'm running at the moment, I'm going to be releasing a tier list based on all the data I've collected through that online league. So it'll give you a kind of idea. Now it's not 100% accurate. It's not enough data to be a fully fledged tier list. But we're talking about something like 6, a fair amount. It'll probably be over 200 games, around about 200 games worth of data that'll be that tier list will be based upon. So you can have a look at that, and maybe that can inform some decisions about teams. But you want to have a bit of a mix in your team, especially to start the game out, so you get an idea about how those characters play. So we've got a few different ones. So Dugrun is definitely an objective holder. That's what I would call him. He's good at, he's very slow, he's pretty slow, so that's why you want to combo him with perhaps Kilgore or maybe Tzu Xiao to boost up his movement, to enable him to move a little bit faster. But he's got some dash, but he's really good at staying on an objective. And if we have a little look, his reaction card, so the 6 cards that you get in each character's deck, 5 which are based on just playing on that one character, and then the reaction card, the defensive reaction card, which has the grey background, which can be used on any of your characters. Now this is all about negate any displacement effects caused by attack. So I already mentioned that the strongest kind of attacks and the strongest moves are ones that are displacement. This stops that. So if you are hitting an objective, and it'll win you the game if you keep that objective, I mean, this is quite clear to see. This is an amazing card to have. It is a red core, and the point is, most of your heavy attacks are red cores. So you need to be thinking about that when you do play that. But this is outside of turn, of course. Then he's got his own mitigation, his own manipulation of enemy characters. He's got his own push 2 after an attack. Really nice. He's got a boost to his other characters. He's got splash damage. He's also got draw and enabling his allies to move. And he's also got, again, another displacement. So Dugrun, the dwarf, is really good at displacing characters. But you'll notice one movement, two movement, two movement, one movement. He's quite slow. Yes, some of this has got a dash on it. So you got this one which got a dash 2, and then each adjacent enemy suffers push 1. That's really strong. Getting into a particular area and then displacing all the characters there is really, really quite a strong move and quite an important one to do. So Dugrun's a really nice character to hold objectives. Now, the other reason why he's really strong for that is because he's got 2 defense, the highest in the game at the moment. So the highest characters with the highest defense is 2. He's only got 6 health, which is certainly on the low end, on the lowest end compared to the characters available at the moment. But with this defense 2, that will stop a lot of attacks, not all attacks, and that's important to note, but a lot of attacks. Now, who's very good against him potentially is Gwaien, because she's got a couple of cards, a couple of attacks that do splash damage, and it does depend on where your positioning is. So it's a very simple. Super Fantasy Brawl is a very simple game to kind of just pick up the general rules and just play the game. But to understand the combos and what other characters can do, that's where the higher skill cap comes in. His leveled up side increases his health by 1. This is quite massive in the sense of being bloodied. One aspect of this game is being bloodied, which is taken down to half health rounded down. So therefore, he would be bloodied at 3 health remaining at 4 damage. Now, that extra 1 means that you need to do an extra damage to him to get him bloodied. When he's bloodied, there are characters which can work upon that, and that's why I'm saying it's really important to why that extra 1 health is really important. And it gives him a bit of longevity as well, which is really important. Now, obviously, one really good combo character with Dugrun, as well as someone who can boost his movement, is someone who can heal him. And there's not a lot of healing going on in this core set of characters. However, when we get to the extra characters, then there are some healing mechanics which go on. So that's Dugrun, okay? A really solid character who's tanky. He's got really good manipulation, and I think that's really his strength, is the ability to manipulate enemies. And when we take this into account, this is a skill. You see the cog icon up here. This means that enemies cannot react against this. So this just happens. That's really strong. Yes, dash 2 is in a straight line. It is depending on what the board state is, but can be really strong and save you. Again, stop your opponent scoring objectives at the start of their turn. That's the key with the game. Okay, let's move on to Goldar. So Goldar is a fantastic character. One of the strongest characters in the game, let alone the core set. In the core set, just to point out, in terms of what we're seeing with play and tier lists, Tzu Xiao is the top tier character, but followed very closely behind by Goldar and then Kilgore. Then you've got kind of Dugrun and Deryn, and then you've got Gwaien to finish it off. However, saying that, Gwaen's one of the strongest starter player characters because of the amount of damage she can do. She's a glass cannon, and we'll talk about her when we come to her in a bit. So we've done Dugrun. So Goldar, he's got a lot of, again, opponent manipulation. He's got some bonuses he gives to his allies, but also he's got a really good reaction card as well. Let's start with the reaction card. It's another red card. So again, that has to be taken into effect. The fact that red core is what you use for your strongest attacks. But gives you 1 inherent defense. Great. But this is the important part. The attacker suffers fear 2. That means they have to move away, and they have to move that maximum distance in a straight line away from you and end up farther away as possible. Now, why this is really good is because if someone's come up to attack you, it's very likely that if they're coming up towards you and adjacent to you, that they are a hand-to-hand specialist. They need to be adjacent. This means that you're going to push them away. You might push them away through traps. You can certainly trigger that, and that happens quite a lot. But you move them away from trying to take you out of your objective holding. Also, if you fear 2 them away, potentially away from the same row of hexes, then that negates any after effect pushes or pulls that the attacker may have. It's a really strong reaction card. He's got attacking 3 targets with push 1, so again, manipulation. He's got attacking a target for pull 2, manipulation. And he's also got dashing through champions to do 1 unblockable damage. The amount of times that you will have characters that just require 1 damage on them to take them out does happen relatively frequently, and that's why set sail's really good. He's also got a boost to his allies. He can move. Don't forget about movement. Movement's massive in this game. That's Dugrun's crux, and why he's not top tier, I believe, is because of his movement. His low movement doesn't help him. Being able to move means you can put yourself into objectives. Again, that's the whole point of the game. That's what you should be aiming for in this game. Then you're drawing 1. Great. You might be able, if you play this right at the start of your turn, which is probably what you will do, your allies will gain +1, +1, +1 movement, +1 damage. So again, if Goldar's with Dugrun, he gives him that extra movement for the rest of this turn. And if you play 2 more Dugrun attacks, he can move a lot further and do a lot more damage. And then you've got more drawing with Plunder. So he's a really solid character. He's got a great reaction card, and he's got a lot of manipulation, and he's got a lot of guaranteed damage, which is really, really, really nice. So Goldar's a really great character. He's also, if we look at his character card, got 8 health with 1 armor. Very solid. Very, very hard to take out. And when he gets leveled up, he doesn't change these stats, but he's immune to push. Remember what I said? Trying to take your opponent out of objective areas is really key. One real common way of doing that is through push. If he is leveled up, you're not going to be able to do that against Goldar. A really solid character, and a great sculpt, and a great pirate-themed character. Okay, moving on to Deryn is next. So Deryn is our huntress. She's the ranged character. Please note that these do not come painted. They come as grey plastic in the game, but fantastic to paint. And I've got all tutorials for every single one on the YouTube channel. So Deryn, she's got a phenomenal reaction card. It is situational, of course, which a lot of these are, but it gives +1 inherent defense, which is always good. That's the average, if you like. Then you place Deryn adjacent to attacker. We talked about it already. Controlling. A lot of these will be controlling the enemy deployment zone, controlling the destruction area, controlling manipulation, controlling the creation area, having a champion in each deployment area. Many of these will trigger, once you trigger this, may trigger you to actually hit objectives. And why it's so strong, any movement from reaction cards is on your opponent's turn. If you do this as their last attack, and you place Deryn into a scoreable objective, there is literally nothing your opponent can do to stop you scoring those points, because you're going to score them at the start of your turn. That's why these are so powerful. Situational, of course, it does depend on the current challenges which are out on the deck, but really, really strong. So that can, and remember, this can be played on any champion. So let's say Kilgore's attacked with someone you play this, Kilgore gets the inherent defense, and then you place Deryn right next to the attacker. That can, honestly, this can win you the game really quite easily. It's also yellow core, which is probably the least effective cores of the 3. Then she's all about trap hexes. Okay, and the reason why we say that is for a level up ability and her 2 main attacks. Heavy shot is when she is on a trap hex. Now, normally, it's just 2 damage with a push 1, which is great. It's manipulation. But if you put her on a trap hex, it's 3 damage with a push 2. That's huge. That's massive. The only issue with it, and limitation, is its range. It's a direct attack, which means there can't be anything in between you and the target, and it has to be a straight line of hexes. And it has to be either 2 or 3 hexes away. That is a massive limitation, which makes it, hard to pull off. The second one is Spring the Trap, which is the opposite. So when the target is in the trap hex, this is a lot easier to pull off, and it's really powerful. Arguably her strongest card. Good movement as well on these cards. 2 movement, then it's 4 indirect. That can go. That's basically targeting any space up to 4 away with 2 damage. And by the way, this is what this means. It can be different in different games, where the number in the range for an attack is up to that value. Same with movement, is up to that value. Okay, 2 damage. But if the target is in a trap, it gains an extra 2. That's 4 damage attack. And if they're in it, they also suffer stun, which means they have to discard a card from that character. Really, really powerful card, and a blue core at that as best as well. This is just a normal 2 damage attack, but a lot of movement. 3 movement to start with, 2 dash at the end. This is planning, so move 2, draw 2, plan 1, and this one's a bonus to your opponent, to your other characters. So you target you focus on a target 4 away, then ignores defense. That's huge. Anything that ignores defense in this game is massive, because a lot of reaction cards are adding defense, and gains +1. So she can use that on herself, of course, for herself. Really, really nice. She's a good damage dealer. She's got some manipulation. She's got 1 card which can manipulate opponents. That's not her forte, which is her downside, you could argue, but a really strong reaction card. And if we have a little look at her card, she's got 7 health with 0 shield, so she is pretty vulnerable. She doesn't change that. However, the way you play her is you chuck her on trap hexes. She gets +2 defense when on trap hex. That makes her a 2/7, massively strong. And she also does not trigger the trap, so she can sit on a trap hex with a trap on there. Really, really strong as a upgrade ability. But again, she's really good at dealing damage, especially with characters on trap hexes. But she's not top tier, I think, because of her manipulation of opponent characters. Right, Kilgore's next. Now we're getting to the kind of the real top tier characters, and Gwaien, who's really strong for those starting out in the game. So Kilgore. So he's got some fantastic cards. I want to bring this one up first of all. A throw. Your opponents can't do anything about this. He gets to move 2. Then one of his adjacent allies can jump 3. That's placed them up to 3 away anywhere on the board. All I want to say is trigger that with Dugrun, and then you've got an objective holder with Kilgore, who is another good objective holder. Really strong card. Maul Thrash is great. It's an attack, 2 damage, but it's got push 2. So again, opponent manipulation. Here's another opponent manipulation that they can't do anything about, where you it's 2 away, direct, and you force 1. That means you get to move your opponent's champion. So you can move them onto trap hexes, you can certainly move them out of objective areas, and then you place Kilgore, even better, you place Kilgore in the target's original hex. So you are taking that objective from them. A stupendously good card. Then he's got an area attack, Fury, which is 2 damage on all targets that are adjacent. That includes friendlies. But then you get to heal 1 afterwards, so nice, especially a yellow card. And then potentially his strongest attack in the game. And just point out, this is a yellow core attack, not a red core attack. But ideally it needs to be done as your first action, which means you need a character adjacent to you. So when you start out in the game, you may not realise that Kilgore does this, in which case you might foolhardily leave one of your champions adjacent to him at the end of your turn, which means they could do Appetite for Destruction after it. This is huge. For every standard core you control, +2. Now, obviously, to do the card, you're going to have to expend the yellow core, so it's going to leave you with 2, maximum of 2 unspent cores. That's still a 5 damage attack with yellow. Huge. And a very, I would say an average, average to below average reaction card. That's his downside, I would say, which is a +1 defense, but +2 until the end of the turn. Now that could be good, because if you've got a champion, for example, like Dugrun, who is holding an objective, and you know that your opponent's going to be pounding on that one champion to stop you from scoring that objective, then this could be really strong, because it gives Dugrun a +1, giving him a 3 defense to start with, and then it will, after that, any other attacks that the opponent does, he's going to be opting for +2 defense. In other words, it's a way of stopping someone from ganging up on, from your opponent from ganging up on one of your champions. But I wouldn't say it's a very strong reaction. And it's also a red core, which again, not for Kilgore, but for other opponents, for other champions, sorry, you want to be keeping your red cores for attacks, if you can. So, Kilgore's abilities are 7-1, so 1 less health than Goldar. So, pretty good, pretty good. The 1 defense will really help him. But he levels up to an 8-1, which is fantastic. And he's immune to stun. It happens every so often, which means that you have to discard 1 card of that chosen character. It's not the strongest of upgrades, but it's reflective of how strong his cards are, is why his upgrade ability isn't as strong. That's Kilgore. He's a big oaf, and he's got decent attack. He's got a lot of manipulation. That's his strong suit. He can just, either by forcing them out of the way or literally just killing them and taking them out of the objective. Really strong character and a fan favourite. Tzu Xiao, possibly arguably the strongest character in the whole game at the moment of current characters. And there's a few reasons for that. Number 1, he's got an insane card. You need to watch out for this. Flash of Jade. If you have your champions, if you're going against Tzu Xiao and you've got all your champions close together, to be honest, that can be a turn 1 disaster for you because of Flash of Jade. It's got movement of 2, which is good, but target 3 champions. This is not attack. There's literally nothing you can do against this. And deal damage to each target until they are bloodied. Remember, you deal damage until they have half health rounded down. So, in other words, for those kind of these Kilgores, it basically does 4 damage without you being able to do anything about it. The minimum damage it will do is 3 with the current champion pool, with Flash of Jade, which is just crazy. And when you consider this can be multiple characters, and it's a skill, so you can't do anything about it, it's extremely strong and probably one of the strongest cards in the game. He's also got double strike, as again, he's a red core attacking one. Really strong again. Dash 2, so movement before, 2 damage with double. So double means that after you get to the damage step, you've taken away armor and all the rest of it, you double whatever the damage was caused. And I'll come to why this can be really strong in a second, because another one of his cards is a bonus card. Move 1, and your champions, you notice it doesn't say allies, your champions gain +1/+1. That means that you're going to get +1 damage and +1 movement to all of your champions, including Tzu Xiao. So you chuck this onto this, and this suddenly moves to, it doesn't add any movement, to be honest, because he hasn't got any movement on his double strike, but it's a 3 damage with double. That could potentially, with someone without any armor, that's 6 damage. And that's a Gwaien taken out with 2 cards. But obviously, if you play Focus as your first card, then you're going to be doing something else, and you could be doing this as well with a 3 damage with pull. So this is manipulation with pull. So he's got that as well. He's also got this pounce, one of his best attacks, most reliable attacks, because he's got a jump 3, just place them 3 from anywhere they are. 1 damage. Okay, you're not doing it for the damage. You're doing it for the push 1. Push them out of the way. Push them out of the thing. So he's got 2 manipulation cards. He's got a bonus to all champions. He's got probably one of the strongest cards in the game. He's got a really solid attack. And he's also got a really situationally decent reaction card. Now, the negative point to this is it's got no inherent defense. But if you know your character's not going to be taken out by the attack, you play this card, especially against people like that have got low health. Now, the attacker also suffers an attack, the attack damage. This is undefendable, unblockable damage. So let's say someone like Dugrun comes in and hits any of your characters. Remember, a reaction can be played on any character. Then you play this. If Dugrun's not taken out, let's say he takes 3 damage from whoever. Let's say you take 3 damage from Dugrun. Then you play this, and 3 unblockable damage just goes straight onto Dugrun. He's bloodied, and he's also going to be relatively easy now to take out on the next turn. You've got to make sure that you are not going to be taken out of action, and you also, it's the attacks damage. So any push, pull damage, any damage that happens after the attack, this will not take into account. So please do bear that in mind. That's why it's situational. But it's blue core, which is nice as well. So you can see how strong his cards are, but that's not all. Look at his health. 9 health. He's absolutely tanky. 9 health. He's absolutely tanky as well. When he upgrades, he stays 9 health, no defense. But adjacent enemies suffer -1. Again, like Kilgore, not an amazing upgrade ability, but we can see because of his cards why that's not super massive. But with his health and his cards, he is a must-take in the competitive scene so far at the moment. Whether he'll get nerfed in the future, we'll find out. But really, really solid champion is Tzu Xiao. Leaving with the final core character, which is Gwaien. Gwaien the Glass Cannon. She has got some massive attacks, and in fact, she's got 3 cards, depending on your opponent's deployment, which can literally just do a huge amount of damage and even take out characters turn 1, straight off the bat. Now, she's got Teleport, which is a nice blue card, which is Jump Forward, which enables her to move anywhere on the board. But these 2 attacks are huge. Fireball. It's got movement to start with. 2 to 3 range. So again, it's subjective to where you're going. But it's indirect, so you can go anywhere. 3 damage base. Then, you don't have to do damage. It just happens. Any adjacent champions, including allies, mind you, get 2 unblockable damage. Just think about that Dugrun. That 2 defense that he's got that makes him really tanky. If he's adjacent to your target, forget it. He's getting 2 damage on him straight off the bat. Chain Lightning, quite similar, but 2 movement now, but a direct shot. So nothing in between, no obstacles in between champions or statues. But 2 to 3 range, 3 damage again, and if damage was dealt, deal 2 damage to another champion within 2 hexes. Wow, you just get to choose another champion within 2. But this does mean that if there are no targets, no allied targets within 2, be careful, because this could be hitting your allies, because you have to deal 2 to another champion within 2 hexes if possible. So that's a little bit, you've got to be a bit careful with that, but really, really, really strong, powerful attacks. I mean, those 2 are huge. I've talked about the jump 2. Here is a manipulation card. Again, 3 damage with 3 to 5 range, huge range. With a push 1, huge amount of attack. An ignite, 2 indirect, 2 damage. And it kind of boosts, ignites that opponent, and it boosts your allies' attacks against that target. It gives them +2. So we're talking about damage here. Gwaen's got huge damage. You combo her with Tzu Xiao. Tzu Xiao gives her the combo on damage, and then suddenly you use your fireball and your ignite, let's say, and you're just using a huge amount of damage. 4 damage, 3 damage. We're talking huge damage there. She's got a weak defensive card, which is a +1 inherent. However, if you're not adjacent to the attacker, it gives you +2. It's not great. It's not great. It's not bad. It's on the lower end of the tier. It is yellow core, which is, you could argue, is a good thing. But how often I've seen that used is not very often at all. But a huge amount of damage. So what's her disadvantage? It's her health. She has no inherent defense, and she only has 6 health. She's going to be targeted a lot. But to help her with that, with the amount of damage she does, it's very likely that she's going to be leveled up, which means you're going to get this bonus. This decreases the minimum range by 1 and increases the maximum range by 1. What that means is your Flame Spear goes from a 2 to a 6. 6 range is crazy. Your Fireball, even more important, goes from a 1 to a 4. You're basically going to be able to pull this off wherever you are. Which means you can keep her away from the action and try and keep her alive. And that's her tactic. But she needs to be leveled up for that. But please be aware that Gwaien is a heavy target. And this is why I say she's a really strong starter player character, because she's got all of that inherent damage, nothing too complex about her playstyle. And people will maybe not be attacking her. They might be going for someone else. Basically, if you've seen Gwaien on the board, she's your target. pretty much most exclusively, because it's easy victory points and it stops her from leveling up. And we've already seen the amount of damage that a lot of the characters can do. Okay, so that's the core 6 characters to start with. I'm going to move on to the kind of extra characters in the core Kickstarter core box, which are the 6 characters, and then finally I'll finish up with the 3 expansion Force of Natures. Okay. Okay, so now we're moving on to the extra characters of the Kickstarter core pledge. Okay, so 6 characters in this one. I'm gonna go through those like I did with the core 6. And what you'll start to see is the more, I guess you could call them, more advanced mechanics that are involved with their cards. If you've been keeping on track of the Kickstarter round 2 new champions which have been revealed, you'll see that that's stepped up yet again, and it's going to change the game completely when they come out. So I'm going to start with Ahket. Probably my personal favourite. I don't think he's the strongest. I don't think he's the best character in the game, but he's one of my personal favourites. So with Ahket, and what a miniature to start with, the Light of Creation, which is pretty cool. He's all about movement, manipulation, and he is very situational. He's about kind of like grabbing cards from your discard and discarding certain red cards to boost his attacks. But let's go through a few of his cards. So first of all, his attacks. He's got 2 attack cards, so he hasn't got a load of attack. He's not really that focused kind of character. But he's got Wingstorm, which is a real classic staple, which is 1 movement, 2 direct range, and 1 damage. So not very strong, but it's got a push 2, which could be massive. I mean, that could be 2 unblockable damage if you're trying to do damage, or of course it could be manipulating your opponent's characters to get them out of scoring objectives. Red core though, bear that in mind. This one's a really nice one, Death from Above. It's Swoop 3. Swoop is like Dash, except for you can go over statues and miniatures and traps. So a swoop basically means a straight line up to that value. Attacking up to 3 targets with 2 damage, so a bit stronger. That's a really nice, and it's a blue core attack as well. Now we get some healing. So I mentioned about healing before. Lifesteal is an attack way of healing, and we saw Kilgore had some lifesteal. I think that's it in the core game. I think Kilgore's the only one with healing. This is a straight skill, move 2, heal 2, and if you discard a blue manipulation card from your hand, you get to heal an adjacent ally instead. So Ahket can be used to move into object, and this is the point. This is what you've got to try and be thinking of, is that you would move Ahket. Say you've got someone already next to the blue zone who's getting a bit of damage on them. You move Ahket to be in that blue zone, adjacent to your character. You discard a blue card, and then you manage to heal up that character that needs the healing by 2. Now, as I say, it's very situational. Number 2, you've got to get adjacent to the opponent to the character you're trying to heal. And number 3 and 2, you need a manipulation card in hand to get rid of, which means you may not be able to use that. So situational, but really nice. Inner Fire is one of the classics for Ahket. It's a fantastic card. Number 1, it's got a huge amount of movement, 3 movement to start with. Then return any red card from your discard pile to your hand. Ahket's attacks gain +1 until the end of the turn. So those 2 attacks, which weren't that great, are suddenly getting 3 and 2. 3 damage against 3 different targets. I mean, that can be massive. That can be massive. And with the movement of 3 and then the swoop of 3, it's probably quite likely that you can get into that position. Really, really strong combo. But it doesn't have to be Ahket's red card. It doesn't have to be an Ahket red card. It could be Loralei's Nature's Wrath or Korvash's Chop or something like that. Something you've used already that you know is there. You get it straight back into your hand. Now, the point is, this is a yellow core card. So once you get this, you can play that red card straight away. So let's say you've already used Wingstorm, and it's in your discard pile. You therefore use Ahket's card here. Sorry, I'm talking about Ahket quite a lot because I just love him so much. You use this card, you move him into position, you grab Wingstorm back, you get +1 attack, you play Wingstorm, it's 2 attack damage and a +2. Brilliant. Or you pick up a red card that you can't use and use a plan action to plan that red card back into your deck for next turn. Something like that. Take Flight is an absolute fantastic card. I love this card. Swoop 4, so in a straight line, up to 4 away. And the first champion swoop through, you put adjacent to Ahket. Now, this can be used for allies or enemies. That's what makes this so strong. So if you've got a setup a little bit like this, and you want to control the yellow zone, nice and easy. You move over to here, and you play Sulka here. Boom. You've got 2 champions adjacent to the yellow statue with 1 card. If you've got an enemy that's controlling a zone, as long as you're in the straight line, of course, you could even be here. Boom, go across here, put Korvash over there. So it's a way of manipulating your enemies, but also transporting your champions, okay, which is really, really strong in this game. So I really like Take Flight as well. Now, his reaction card is another red core reaction and is very much situational. You've got to make sure that you are going to be taken out of action before you play it, of course. Because if you are taken out by action, you place them adjacent to the attacker instead of your gate. So instead of coming back over towards your gate, not deployment area, your gate, you actually place them anywhere adjacent to the attacker. So again, just like with Deryn's, when you'll be able to move your characters out of your turn on your opponent's turn, it's really strong. Please note that the person that you play this on will still be taken out, will still level down, will still give your opponent 1 VP, and still level up your opponent's champion that took out that character. But being able to put him back and put him back on controlling an objective that can potentially win you the game, that can be massive, especially if you're ahead in the game. So that's Ahket's cards. He's got some really strong cards. He's a solid character with 7 health and 1 defense. So a solid, a good above average health and defense. But he gains an extra health when he levels up. Fantastic. So very, very similar to Kilgore. And this is where his strength lies in his upgrade ability. When he attacks, you may discard any number of red cards from your hand and get +1 for each one discarded that way. So remember, we had this one where you're drawing a red card in your hand. You can use that just as an extra +1 attack on another card. So let's say you're doing Death from Above and you're leveled up. You can play this card first of all, get yourself in position, pick up a red card, then you could discard that red card and do a 4 damage attack against 3 different targets. That's pretty strong. So that's Ahket, and Ahket is a decent character indeed. Next we've got Sulka. Again, quite a fan favourite to be used, and there's a reason for that. Again, she's got a lot of different things she can do. She's got some pretty decent attack damage. She's got some manipulation, and she's got one of the best reaction cards in the game. It's a very good reaction card. So life drain first of all. We've got this life steal thing, gaining health for the amount of damage that you do on your attack. Move 2, direct damage up to 3, 2 damage. Life steal. The heal from this life steal, this is the big bit, may be assigned to one of Sulka's allies instead of her. There is no range anywhere on the board. This is huge at keeping your characters alive. This is a massive card. Please notice as well that life steals on the attack damage, not the amount of wounds that the defending character received. So if you've got an attack damage of 3, you take away any armor, and then whatever that value is what you're going to be life stealing back, is the amount of health you're going to gain back. A great card. It's quite random, but it's a great card. Mind control, nothing they can do about it. Move 2, always strong. discard the top card of the opponent's deck, and then the matching enemy suffers force 2. So you discard the top card of their deck, whichever one of the 3 characters that card belongs to, you are going to be able to move them to. Now, I say it's a little bit random and a little bit risky, because if you're trying to move one champion off an objective, obviously you may not be drawing this their card on the discard pile. And she's a bit more of an advanced character in the sense that you need to be looking at your opponent's discard pile, see what the likelihood of certain champions will be spawning up on their draw deck, and then that will give you an idea of if it's valid to play that or not. But being able to move them in any direction is really strong, onto traps, out of scoring objectives and everything else. Here's her other manipulation. She's really good for opponent manipulation. It's a skill, can't do anything about it. Move 2 direct, force 1, just get to move them 1 anywhere, and also stun them. So here we got a stun coming into play. Really nice. Where the opponent has to discard a card of that champion. This is beautiful. This is a really good card to hit him with her darting strikes, which I'm going to talk about next. Move 3, really strong movement. May move through enemy statues and traps without activating. Great. Like swoop. Enemies move or jump. Enemies move through, suffer -2 defense till the end of the turn. That's big, because remember, not only is it the inherent defense of the character, but it's also the reaction cards tend to put on defense. Okay. Now, why this is really important is because of her darting strikes, which is a 3 indirect, 2 damage with double. You take away their defense, you're probably going to be doing 4 damage with that one card. Really, really nice. And I said it before, really strong reaction card, +2 defense, strongest reaction at the moment in the game in terms of adding defense. But the attacker also suffers root. Again, it's situational, but root means they will not be able to move for the rest of the turn. So let's say someone's coming in to try and take an objective, and they attack you first. You play this reaction, and they won't be able to move into the objective, even if they've got like a -2 after attack, whatever it might be. So that situation, it can be really, really strong, and a yellow core reaction to boot. So really, really nice set of cards. She's 0-7, so on the lower end of health and defense. Not the squishiest of characters, but getting close to it. But she does get an extra health once she levels up, and she's got a really nice kind of flow mechanic that after you play a blue Sulka manipulation card, draw 1 and plan 1. So that's massive. That's a huge bonus to talk about. And I'll talk about the standard actions after I've gone through the characters. Right. The other, maybe the strongest character other than Tzu Xiao in the game in its current iteration is Korvash. And what a miniature as well. Wielder of Scornbait. So, let's talk about why he is probably the strongest. I would say certainly the strongest character. If you want someone to just do pure damage and take characters out, he's your man. He's so strong, and we'll see why with his cards. Red card, chop. All around, so targeting all adjacent areas. It gets +2 for each target. Now, it doesn't say enemy. So you can actually use your allies to boost up this attack. So let's say he's next to 2 of the enemy champions, which is probably quite likely. Then it's going to be 4 damage on both of those. Nice. If you manage to, if your opponent is silly enough to leave 3 champions right next to each other, that's 6 damage on each of those champions. That's massive. If you put one of your allies next to that, we're talking about an 8 damage, which would pretty much take out any character in the game. 8 damage, which means you could basically be taking out 3 characters. Now, please be aware, and your opponent can play reaction cards, so please be very, very careful about putting your own allies into harm's way using chop. But really strong attack. Next one. He works on the ability of attacking and gaining bonuses on bloodied targets. So if the target that Korvash is attacking is bloodied, he's going to get bonuses on top of bonuses. So the first one is Sap Strength, movement 2, 2 direct, 2 damage, but gains +2 if they're bloodied. It's like a finishing move is the best way to think of Sap Strength. to do 4 damage on a character that's already bloodied, we'll probably be taking them out. He has his own manipulation skill, which is fantastic. Manipulation skills are just so strong because there's nothing the opponent can do about them. Move 1, adjacent, push them 1, and stun them as well. Lovely. Hell hath no fury. It's a really strong attack, just base. It's 2 indirect, and 3 damage. You don't even have to be adjacent. But if your opponent is bloodied, and notice this is after attack, so you take this 3 damage into account before you trigger this. So if your 3 damage causes that character to become bloodied, it will trigger this ability, and it forces them 1. You can move them 1. Again, manipulating your character. I would say arguably probably his best attack in his deck is his Leaping Strike. This is massive strong because of the movement. Apologies. So with Leaping Strike, why it's so strong is because you've got 1 movement, and then you've got a jump 2, and this is a before attack. So you do this before you do the damage, and you have to be adjacent. So just think how much movement that is. That's crazy movement. Also, the reason why this card, people be shouting out for it to be nerfed and the movement taken away, is because if Korvash is off the board, he can use the movement to come onto the board, and then he can jump 2, and he can pretty much get an attack in with 1 card from being defeated. That's huge. That's huge in the game. So yeah, really, really strong attack. And let's not even mention the fact that if you boost up Korvash with Tzu Xiao or Goldar, you're getting 2 movement and 4 attack. That is crazy. You can basically just get anywhere on the board and do a 4 damage attack with 1 card. Wow. Although I think not actually, because yellow core is... No, that's not right. Because Tzu Xiao's and Goldar's bonus cards, I think, are both yellow. So I don't think that will work. An absolute amazing reaction card as well to boot, which is +2 defense. Brilliant. The highest in the game. And if the attacker is bloodied, which if you're against Korvash, it's very likely that you are going to be, ignore any post-attack or after-attack effects. Wow, that is huge. And at the end of this video, I'm going to go through the keywords and just really explain them in detail. So, because of what I've seen in terms of misconceptions about the game and misrules, I think it's important to talk about this. Right. Also, not only is all those cards really good, he's also got 8 health to start with, which is really strong. No defense, mind. So I would say this is average in terms of health with defense. But you could argue in the game it's better to have health than armor, although that's dependent. It depends on the characters you're against. So a decent amount of health. It increases by 1 when he's upgraded, and not only that, is unlike a lot of other characters who have really good cards, they have a not so great upgrade ability. His is insane. Korvash's attacks ignore defense if the target is bloodied. So when we consider reactions add on defense, it just ignores all of that. And his attacks, which are strong anyway, will literally ignore them if they're bloodied. That is huge. And why Korvash is known to be, if not the best character in the game at current presence. Very strong character indeed, Korvash. Okay, next is Rath. Rath's one of those characters I really want to work, and I can never get him to work. And I think it's because of his vulnerability, his squishiness, as I would call it. A bit like Gwaien. So, first of all, he's got a hell of a lot of movement and a decent amount of damage. That's his thing. The problem is he doesn't have manipulation, which is a massive disadvantage. I've already talked about right at the start of this video how important opponent manipulation is. And this is one of them. Now, we'll have a look at double dealing first. A blue core, which is nice to get an attack on blue core. 2 movement, great. 2 indirect range, fantastic. 2 damage with double, great. What a great start. His next one, burrow, jump 2 before the attack. Attack adjacent for 3, nice. For yellow core, that's awesome. Jump 2 after attack, so you can jump away. By the way, any after attack effects, you have to have done the attack, or at least targeted something with the attack before you can do that, or else it doesn't trigger. Any after attacks don't. Before attacks, always trigger. The next one is a skill. It's not even an attack. Stalk beneath. Adjacent. Do 2 unblockable to an energy adjacent enemy. If any damage was dealt, which I can't see why it wouldn't be. It's a bit bizarre that they put that, because you always do damage. If you're going to do 2 unblockables, there's nothing you can do that. You can't react against it, and you can't defend against it. So, bit bizarre. But place Rath adjacent to an ally. So, anywhere on the board adjacent to an ally. Again, hitting those objectives. Really nice. Sneak attack. Now, this one's got a great ability. 2 movement. Attack for 2. Yeah, it seems alright. But reactions cannot be played during this attack. You know they're not going to react against it. Going to push you away. Going to cause damage on you. Going to add supreme amounts of defense. You know that this 2 damage is basically going to go through. Obviously, if it's a heavily armed character, that's perhaps not so great for a red core. He's also got a bit of planning as well. Move 2, Nightshade. Draw 2, plan 1, and Rath's next attack this turn ignores defense. You trigger that with sneak attack. That's pretty nice, because his sneak attack ignores defense, and it's going to do 2 damage on whatever champion, especially a Loralei. So he's more of like a hunter against armoured characters. And then he's got... I would perhaps argue this is the strongest reaction in the game. So, you may not see it to start with the +1 armour. It's a yellow core, nice, and it's a jump 2 after the attack. Now, that's huge for a number of reasons. Number 1, it's jumping out of the way to suffer any pushes and pulls that your opponent might be doing afterwards. Number 2, you can hit objectives using this card, because it can be on any champion, not just Rath, any champion. And you get to jump them too, place them 2 hexes from where they are, anywhere. You can hit an objective, and because this is not in your turn, you're going to score that objective at the start of your next turn. A very, very, very potentially strong reaction card. And I would argue, along with perhaps Korvash's reaction card and Sulka's reaction card, one of the strongest in the game. So, looking at the cards, they look really strong in terms of attack and movement. Now, as I said, the biggest disadvantage with the Rath is no opponent manipulation. That's a huge negative, and that's what I've seen in the game, to be honest. In the game, I've seen him being taken out very frequently because he needs to be quite close to do his attacks. I've seen him not trigger his attacks to be able to manipulate and take opponents' champions out of scoring objectives. He's really about trying to take out those opponents from their objective rather than trying to displace them. That's what his mechanic is, but it doesn't always work. Now, why he's quite squishy, and the other negative to Rath, is he's a big target because he's 6, very similar to Gwaien, 6 health, exact same as Gwaien actually, and no defense. Pretty bad. Now he does have that reaction, which means that he can hopefully get out of the way. But when you consider that, usually your opponent's not going to play one champion over and over for all 3 cores, it's likely that the jump 2, yeah, you might be able to get further away from that champion, but you're probably going to be closer to another champion. Levels up, it's nice. You get some extra health. That's good. And he also gains poison. I'll talk about poison at the end of the video. So, yes, he's good at attack. Yes, he's good at movement. But the lack of manipulation of opponents from objectives is really negative, and his health is also a big negative. Right, who's next? Mariusz. Mariusz, who is thought to be the worst character in the game at the moment. And I'll talk about the reasons why that's the case in a second. But looking at his card, he's got a good card set, actually. It is a good card set. Not perhaps the best, but it is good. This is crazy good. Stalk the Prey is probably one of the best cards in the game. Place Mariusz adjacent to an enemy, anywhere on the board. Just do it. Then, not only that, if that enemy is bloodied, or any adjacent bloodied enemy suffers stun, you could basically be getting rid of your opponent's hand, you could be putting him into a position where scoring objectives, meeting objectives, contesting objectives. A really, really solid card. Looking awesome. Bone to pick. Move 1, attack for 2. Now the problem with this is it requires Mariusz to be bloodied. Now Mariusz works on being bloodied himself. That's his mechanic. And we'll come to why that's a big problem and why he's classed or thought of as probably the worst character in the game. Now, if he is bloodied, you get -2 before this, and that turns to a 4 damage attack. That's insane. A lot of movement and a lot of damage. Next one, 2, adjacent, 2. Quite similar to his last one. Again, -2, you just get that as standard. So this is a better movement than the last one. Also, if he's bloodied, it gains double, which makes it into a really strong attack. But again, you need to be bloodied. Notice that. Next one, Ravenous Bite, is a good strong attack. It's got a -2 to start with. Remember, straight line, no obstacles. And then there's a 3 damage. Great. And it's got lifesteal, so you can get your health back. Brilliant. Overpower, 1, adjacent, 2 attack, -2 to start with. So you see a common theme here with 2 attacks and dashes to start with. That tends to be his attacks. If he's bloodied, force 1. That's how he manipulates the opponent. That's the only way he manipulates the opponent. And I think this is the problem, one of the big problems with Mariusz, which is similar to that of Rath. He's got, again, a very situational reaction card. Potentially could take out an attacker if they have 2 health left. But if you know how to play the game and you know Mariusz's cards, you'll know that he has that in his repertoire. But no defense. It ain't going to stop any attack damage coming through. Enemies adjacent to the target suffer 2 damage. So that's really nice if they're ganging up on that particular character. Remember, this doesn't have to be Mariusz. If they're ganging up on a particular character, you can basically do splash damage of 2 against anything. It's very situational, but could be very strong. So, a lot of attack. My God, what a lot of attack. 4 attack cards, an amazing movement card to just get him anywhere on the board, and a situationally very strong attack in terms of a reaction card. So really, really strong attack. So why is he classed as so bad, as it were? So it's because of his stats, his stat line. 7 health, no defense. So 7 health is just above, just below average, I would say. Average just below, with the 0 defense. That means for him to be bloodied and trigger for all of his attacks, he has to have only 3, 2, or 1 health left. That makes him a very simple target. You are going to be attacking Mariusz if he's anywhere near bloodied. If he's not bloodied, don't attack him. That is the basic tactic. If you're playing against Mariusz, is you just do not target him. You never target him unless he's bloodied. That means that Mariusz's player has to get him bloodied. Now, either by running through traps, which is quite a classic tactic of a Mariusz player, to try and get him bloodied to really boost these cards and make them worthwhile. On his reverse side, he doesn't change his health. Now, I think this is a bad move. I think there's been talk about how can Mariusz be improved and make him more playable. Just by increasing the health by 1 is kind of a classic idea that if you increase his health by 1, yes, he still needs 4 damage to become bloody, but he's going to have potentially, 4 health left. That's huge. That's a big difference. The difference between 3 and 4 health is massive because this game, a lot of attacks, the strong attacks are 3 damage attacks. So that may not necessarily kill him off. He also, is leveled up, gets lifestealed while he is bloodied. Again, he has to be bloodied. And because on his upgrade side, he's only got 7 health again, it's hard to trigger that from happening. So in the competitive scene, we have not seen Mariusz play hardly at all because of those reasons. No enemy manipulation. That's huge. There's no doubt he's a good attacking player, just even without being bloodied. But the fact he's an easy target, if he needs to be, and I think that's the key, easy target if he needs to be, because if he's bloodied, it means he's not got a lot of health left, which means he's an easy target to take out, get that VP, and stop him from being bloody still, because he's going to come back on the board fully health again. So, Mariusz, looking at his cards, he looks really strong with a hell of a lot of movement, with all dashes. Pretty much all of his attacks got dashes, and with potential to do huge amounts of damage, but with that prerequisite and very important prerequisite of being bloodied himself and the 7 health combo. I think that's the problem, because when this game first was developed and we were demoing it years back, Bloody was the other way around. Bloody was the half health rounded up, so he would be bloodied at health 4. Now that's when he was designed, and that's why the change to the bloodied rule has affected him the worst by far. And it's actually boosted Korvash, and that's why Korvash is so powerful at the moment. Right, Kalal's next. Kalal is the Jungle Typhoon. Here she is. She's got a lot of movement. She's got a bit of everything, actually, to be honest. Again, the only problem with her is she's got one manipulation. Well, no, she's got 2 manipulations. So she's got some opponent manipulation as well. So she's got a bit of everything. So first of all, Mighty Jump. Wow, look at this. First of all, you jump 3. Then you attack everything adjacent to you with 2 damage and push 1. So it's kind of like jumping, like what am I trying to think of? Gimli in Helm's Deep, where he jumps onto the bridge and literally bashes all of the orcs away from him. That's what she's doing here with the Mighty Jump. Is literally jumping into the fray, doing damage to all of those targets, and also pushing them out of the way. Great card. Look at this for an awesome planning card. And it's yellow, not blue, and I think that's a very important point to make a note of. She moves 2, draws 3, then plans 3. That's fantastic. Next one, double jump. I told you she got a lot of movement. Jump 3, place it anywhere 3 towards you. Adjacent causes 2 damage, and then jump 3 again. Jump out the way. Tongue Lash. This doesn't tend to trigger as much as you would like, because pretty much as long as you've got 1 defense, you're stopping it. 1 is direct, not an indirect shot. 3 though, so long distance. 1 damage, but if damage was dealt, the target suffers pull 2 and stun. That could be massive, but triggering that off, I mean, most opponents will just play a reaction if they have no defense to start with, to stop that from triggering, and therefore they're really laughing. Poison Dart's really nice move. Move 1, attack 3 range indirect, 2 damage with poison 1. Poison is basically just doing, if you do damage on your attack, you do the poison value extra damage. And then finally, Blinding Dart is it's not great. It's very much average. 1 defense. The attacker suffers stun, which is good to get rid of a card, but ultimately, you know, unless you're doing this as your first reaction against the first attack, it's not really going to affect them much because they're going to be discarding their hand anyway at the end of their turn. So not a great reaction card on Kalal. But some really nice movement and attack. Bit of manipulation, but some great planning as well. 0-8, good, average. Average to good. Health there on her normal side. Doesn't change on her upgraded side, but really, really strong ability. Targets suffer -2 defense against Kalal's attack. So now, when she's upgraded, this looks great. This looks fantastic because you're pretty much guaranteed to do that pull 1 and pull 2 and stun. So she's one of those that you need to get leveled up. You need to get leveled up, and then she really triggers. She comes into her own, and she really starts triggering on all cylinders. A fantastic character when she is leveled up. So that completes the 6 extra characters from the Kickstarter core. And finally, we'll move on to the 3 characters from the Force of Nature. Okay, so Force of Nature expansion, the 3 champions from there is next. We're going to start with Nevamor. So I love these 3 champions, by the way. They mix up the game a little bit, some different mechanics going on, which is really cool. So with Nevamor, who is the Shade. A few attacks first. So Grim Harvest, 2 movement, attack adjacent for 2, but that's not the strength of it. This text is. It gains +2, turns into a 4 damage attack if the target has no allies within 2. So imagine a Nevamor with a Korvash or a Tzu Xiao. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe with those kind of characters where you're threatening if they keep them together. If they keep their characters together, that could be really bad for them because of Chop and because of Flash of Jade. Flash of Jade. They enable you to attack multiple targets in the same area. So if they start to pull them apart, and especially if you've got champions that like to be separate, the Gwaiens, the Loraleis, the Raths, if they're away from their allies, this is massive. It's a 4 damage attack in base, which is huge. Where's the next attack? Here we go. So next we got Soul Reeve. 2 movement, 2 indirect, 2 damage with lifesteal. So it's a way of getting healing up Nevamor again. So you notice that we've got a few champions now that that have got that healing mechanic in them. His next one is move 2, 2 to 3 range, 1 damage. It's pretty rubbish, to be honest. But with plan 2 after the attack. That's nice. That's nice. Whereas normally a standard blue action is move 1, plan 1. This turns that blue action into move 2, do an attack, and plan 2. So double the difference in how much better it is. Next one, Nightmare. Move 1, swoop 4. Remember, in a straight line over champions, hexes, and any obstacles, statues, whatever it might be. And any enemy swoop through suffer 1 unblockable damage. So very similar to Goldar's, but even better. Fear 1, because remember Goldar's was dash, you couldn't go through statues of Goldar's. And Fear 1. So Fear 1 means you have to move away from the triggering champion in a straight line, and it needs to be further away than where you started. So really nice. Again, being able to manipulate the opponents. Next one, move 2. Place one of Nevamor allies adjacent to Nevamor, no matter where they are on the board. Huge. Not only that, the ally gains +1 till the end of the turn. This is insane. That's an amazing card. Just boosting up one of your heavy-hitting characters to go next to Nevamor and then attack someone with extra damage. Imagine a Gwaien with that. That would be crazy good. Murder of Crows is his reaction. It's a good reaction. We'll see what that means. +1, so average to pretty bad. But if Nevamor is in 2 hexes of the attacker, ignore any post-effect attacks and end all other lasting effects. So what that means is if let's say they've boosted up their allies and everything with Tzu Xiao, then they go and attack one of your champions. And if Nevamor is within range 2 of those characters, you've resolved the attack that you've just done for that champion. But then the last action that your opponent has will not have +1/+1. So it's got a double effect, which can be really good. It is a red core reaction, which is not great, but it's pretty good. Now his strength lies in his card, where he's got 1 defense and 8 health. Crazy. Same on the leveled up side. This is crazy. Enemies adjacent to Nevamor cannot be targeted by an opponent's reaction. What that means is that if you've got Nevamor adjacent to your opponent's characters and you attack them, as long as Nevamor's adjacent to them, they can't do any reactions. That is so big. That's so massive. And when you consider your opponent obviously plays reactions on your turn, you can set it up so that Nevamor is adjacent. And when we consider his level up ability with Guiding Light, for example, he can be adjacent to an enemy, bring in a better attacking character to go adjacent with a +1, then attack with that character, and they will not be able to react against that. That is huge. That is massive. That can be doing a ton of damage, 4 or 5 damage easily, and they can't react against it, which means you're pretty much guaranteed to take them out. So He's got a lot of movement. He hasn't got much manipulation. The only one he's got is Nightmare with your opponent. So that is his disadvantage. That's his Achilles heel, if you like, which is a bit of a problem. But with his ability to move his allies adjacent to him and cause all of those problems, and especially that attack on isolated enemy champions, that could be massive. So that was Nevamor. Next we have Loralei, one of my favourite characters to play, especially recently. Now, we'll go for the cards first, and then we'll go to her stats, and then the most powerful, by far, in my opinion, upgrade ability. So, got an attack. It's average to below average. 2 movement, direct 2 damage, swap the target's location with another enemy champion, so after the attack. And I think that's the problem. This is an after attack. If it was a before attack, that could be strong. But it means that you're doing the damage on a champion and then you're moving them away from you. And then replace them with another champion. Now, if they're hiding a champion, like on the other side of the board from all your champions, and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to struggle to get that, then this could be quite useful because you don't have to do damage. And you switch them over and then you can attack that champion with someone a bit better. So, bit situational, not a great attack. This is insane. This again is probably one of the strongest attack cards in the game, especially for Loralei, and I'll show you why, and I'll talk about the tactics in a minute. So, movement of 1, a range, and this is quite bespoke, 3 to 4, so it has to be 3 or 4 away, but long distance away, and that's a good thing. 3 damage, strong attack, but this is the strongest bit. The attack ignores the defense of the target. That will include if you play reactions. Any defense on reactions will also be ignored as well. Huge, absolutely huge. This is her calling card. This is her essential card she needs to level up, to become the ultimate champion that she can be. Next one, Grasping Vines. Move 1, direct target to 2 away. Place the target adjacent to Loralei. This may be target Loralei's allies. Consider it's only 2 away, I've not really seen this being used at all, if I'm being completely honest, in the game. I think that's possibly one of the weakest cards in the game. But she's got what she's really good at is staying away from the action and just helping her allies. Nature's Wrath, huge amount of range. Healing Rain, movement 3, she can get out of the way, discard up to 4 cards from your hand, heal your champions 1 each for each of these cards. Now that might sound really terrible because you've got a hand of 5 cards, right? So I play this, and then I'm getting rid of up to my entire hand. That's not great. Yeah, you've got standard actions as well, but this is where it triggers again into her upgrade ability, and she's really important to upgrade. I can't argue that as much as I possibly can. Clairvoyance, move 3, draw 1, plan 5. You can basically plan your next turn. Really strong card, super strong when she's leveled up, and this is a common theme with Loralei. Next is Intervention. On first glance, it looks pretty terrible. 1 defense, but if no damage was dealt, the target may heal 3. Great, but, you know, what attack has 1 damage? However, when you consider the defense of your champions, and this is what she really, I would say she works well, and maybe best, with champions that have defense, especially the Loraleis, and the Dugruns, and and anyone with a 1 defense as well, to be completely honest, because this will tend to trigger, because you get the +1 on top of the 1. If no damage is dealt, you heal 3. So you're basically healing your character, blue core as well. I've seen that being used to really great effect. Now, when all of this stuff really starts to trigger a lot more, and helps all of your other characters as well, is when she levels up. Basically what you want to be able to do, and the best tactics for Loralei and Loralei's team, is you normally, because she is a pure support character, you get someone like Taze, like Korvash, like Kilgore, like Rath, like Gwaien. Basically anyone who's, you probably won't use Gwaien or Rath, to be honest, because they're a bit low health, and she's only got 4 health. But anyway, anyone who can do damage, and then you use Nature's Wrath, and you take out a character. You level her up, and then you keep her away. That's the tactic. That's her tactic. That's what you want to do. Once she's leveled up, She stays at 4 health, 2 armor. So really terrible health. So if you can do if you can bloody her, Korvash can go in there leveled up and ignores any defense. There's not much you can do about that. Loralei's dead. And I would say Loralei is one of those characters that will be a target, will be a prime target for your opponent. The Raths, the Korvashes, the Mariuses, the Kalels, Tzu Xiaos, and then also obviously the Gwaens and the Deryns. But in particular, the Korvash, it can ignore defense. The Rath, it can ignore defense. Those two champions in particular can be really, really dangerous against Loralei, because if they can ignore her defense, she's only got 4 health. She's going to be going down really quite frequently. And that's why you keep her away. You force your opponent to have to move away from objectives to take her out. Because once she is leveled out, she's going to be a big target, because she draws you draw an additional 2 cards in the upkeep phase. That means you're drawing 7 cards in the upkeep phase. Bear in mind, if you do Clairvoyance, you're going to, as one of your 7 cards, you're going to draw 1, so back up to 7, and plan 5 of those 7. If you've got Healing Rain, you've got 7 cards in hand now. You can easily discard cards and heal your whole team with Healing Rain. That's what makes her really, really strong. And by drawing 7 cards instead of 5 means that you mitigate the problem of drawing only single-coloured cards in your hand, which can happen, or only 2 colours of cards in your hand, and giving you a pretty bad turn, or drawing just reactions or loads of reactions in one of your hands. That happens in the game because it's a random draw. Drawing 7 means that the likelihood of that happening is much lower, and it means that you're going to be drawing those cards. Then if you think about her combo with other characters, like you put her with Ahket, and if Ahket can get leveled up as well, discarding red cards gives you +1 each time. If you've got 7 cards in hand instead of 5, you're going to be drawing more red cards, and especially with his ability to draw out a red card or pick up a red card from your discard pile and then using that to discard, you could be easily looking at a 6 damage attack with Ahket, which would just be insane on each character, in each of the 3 characters potentially. So she has the best level up ability in the game. I don't think there's any question about that. She also has some fantastic defense cards. She cannot manipulate characters apart from this one, but again, you're swapping it, so you're not actually taking a character away from that objective. So that is her disadvantage, and that is her downside. But ultimately, with Nature's Wrath, you should be able to take out characters relatively frequently. And of course, you can plan. You've always got the plan, okay? So you can always plan that card as well. That's Loralei. The ultimate support. Taze is a brute. He's got some fantastic mechanics, and he works on the mechanics of dashing to get his movement. So, rush, move 2, then Taze or an ally may dash 2. Really good to get things into position. Charge, what an attack. This is crazy good. Move 1, that move 1 is essential. That will save you, that'll make this card really shine. Then you attack someone adjacent, but before you do your attack, you dash 3, and then the attack gains +1 for each hex you dashed. So if you dash 3, which you should be able to do for most of these, you're doing a 4 damage attack with a yellow core. Awesome. And not only that, is you're effectively moving 4. So it's a huge amount of movement, huge amount of damage, really, really strong attack. This is really nice just to do damage. Again, you want to get rid of Loralei? Taze is your man. Move 2, and then you can move through enemies. Enemy move through, suffer 2 unblockable damage. She's bloody. So just doing that 1 attack, she's bloody. Okay, the Dugruns, or just trying to just trying to finish off a character. Rodeo can be really good. Can't react against it, nothing you can do. Bludgeon, move 2, 2 indirect with 2 damage, and with a stun afterwards. Quite a good attack. The stun's nice to get rid of cards from an opponent's hand is always good when it comes to their turn. Finishing blow, and it is very much a finishing blow. So, for example, you'll use this on when a character's got like a 3 health left, which means they probably are bloodied anyway, which is why this triggers so well. 3 damage, so really nice. Dash 2 to start with, so there is some movement to start with as well. With 3 attack, it's just a nice attack. But if the target is bloody, it ignores defense. Again, reactions aren't going to save. that character. It really is a finishing blow. It's a fantastic card, really strong. And he's got a really good reaction card as well. It's only +1, which isn't great, but it's all right. But it's the -1 afterwards. Again, movement outside your turn, in your opponent's turn, to hit onto objectives is massive. Also, you can dash out the way of any pushes and pulls. So Taze, fantastic character. His stats, 9 health like Tzu Xiao, really strong. And he's and no defense. He goes up to he stays at 0.9, upgraded. And then when instead of dashing, he can deal 1 unblockable instead. And when you consider how many dashes he's got, there's a dash on his reaction. There's a dash. There's a dash. There's a dash. So he's got a lot of ability to just do unblockable that the enemy cannot do anything about. That's why he can be so strong. And not only that, even with the with this finishing blow, for example, if he's adjacent to the character when he's going to play finishing blow, instead of dashing 2, he just does 1 unblockable. Then he does a 3 attack, ignoring defense if they're bloodied. Absolutely massive. So he can deal a lot of damage. Again, we've got no forcing, we've got no pushing, we've got no pulling, no opponent manipulation. So please be aware of that. So you wouldn't take him with, for example, trying to think, you wouldn't take him with Nevamor necessarily, because you're really not going to have a lot of manipulation to your enemy, and that's such a strong tactic and important one as well. So that's the 3 Force of Nature expansion characters, and that covers the kind of hints and tips and character breakdown video this time round. So enjoy brawling with Super Fancy Brawl in the future, and hopefully I've given you a bit of idea and insight into those different champions. Until next time.